Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much to every single one here that came out tonight. Some people asked, before Rosh Hashanah, maybe we should have, a Fabrengen, a Tshuva event, different types of things, which are all very important. When it comes to Pikuach Nefesh, a life of a person, there's nothing more important, and there's never a time that's a bad time to deal with these matters. Everyone who's here tonight is here for a reason. And some of us know from close, from either family or friends, someone close to us that had to or has to deal with addiction. Some of us over here might not know people personally, but are aware of the effects. And some of us are wondering, there's so much talk, and it's becoming more and more something that's being discussed. There must be something there. Maybe it's relevant to me, it's not relevant to me. So, besides the practical Maisa B'Payel, we're here to get things done and to save lives and to better ourselves and our community. And therefore, a big emphasis of this event will be a Narcan training, or naloxone, which is something that has saved many, many, many lives. And over the past few years, more and more has become more simple to administer, more available. Anyone could do it if they have some basic training, and it's getting easier to save those lives. This event is co-sponsored and was put together by a couple of organizations, community organizations, Neshamos, which in the past few years has definitely revolutionized this conversation. The discussion is in the open. People are talking about their stories, and we start understanding that this is a very real thing that is going on between us. There's no family, there's no type of family that is immune to the opioid epidemic, from the most Chassidish families, the most Yeshivish families, to any family that one might think that is immune to such a thing. The facts are, unfortunately, that lahavdil by Goyim as well, as a country, in the world, the drug epidemic is a very, very serious thing. Us at the Aleph Institute, who really are more known to deal with Jewish people who are in prison and limited environments and mental health facilities, soldiers as well, we end up on the other side. If someone's life was saved and they're still alive, we end up meeting them in those facilities, in the prison system, in hospitals. And, there was a judge, Jack Weinstein, that was involved in, he's a federal judge still on the bench today, was involved in, with Aleph from its onset. When he was by the Rebbe a few times, the Rebbe always spoke to him, prevention, prevention, prevention. Even though prison is not necessarily a good thing and not really getting the results that we want done, but we should always be a few steps ahead. So tonight, when we're dealing with so many different situations, probably, I don't know if it's the most, but for sure second to the most, incarcerations are due to drug-related addiction, and the amount of deaths, let's be honest, let's be straight, you have to talk about this, we can't be ambiguous. Deaths that happen in every community from overdoses that could really be avoided. So you could speak a lot about it. There's a lot of details to discuss, stories that people understand, that between ourselves, between us, sometimes it's a classmate or a child's classmate or a friend, an adult friend, that is going through this crisis, and we're not aware. So, first of all, first and foremost, awareness. Just open. We all care. We're here for a reason. Everyone cares. Everyone wants to do the right thing. And it's amazing when dealing with so many different types of situations, when you're able to get involved and realize what someone's going through, and by extension, in many situations, save a family, save a person, save a person's life, you're by extension, of course, someone who literally gives life and sustains one person. It's as if he saved and held up the whole world. That's in Torah and Yiddishkeit, but we know that that's true. One person at the wrong time of their life going through something. And not necessarily if we're not aware and we're not in tune, we don't necessarily see those signs. And when they turn around, in many cases, even at the last second, I'm not talking about prevention and education, which comes before, which is all very, very pertinent to this conversation. But even at the last second, talking about tonight's, trying to stress tonight, even the Narcan training saves a life, and then later, person eventually, Hatzalah will get involved in the medical team, and we're going to learn more how it literally can save a life. And once that happens, you save the person, the right environment, the right community, the right friend, the right neighbor, and you actually saved many generations to come and the whole environment, and by extension, the community. Interestingly, Narcan was invented by a Jew named Jack Fishman. He passed away, Olav Shalom. His wife, Joy Fishman, lives in Manhattan. Her son, I'm saying this story because she openly talks about it. Joy Fishman is an amazing person. She's a huge supporter of Aleph. And her son died from an overdose in 2003, just 16 years ago. So Jack Fishman, the one who saved thousands of lives, his own child, his wife's child, his stepchild, died from an overdose. He was in the system. Aleph knew him and saved a few years of his life for sure. And that's why she's so vocal and open about the work of not only being aware, not only seeing the signs, not only saving a life, as Narcan can do in just one split second, but also the whole follow-up that involves with saving someone. In the court system today in the United States, they recognize, everyone knows, if anyone's aware, there's a new bill, a prison reform bill. Everyone realizes that drugs is not a crime. Drugs is an epidemic that everyone's suffering from. There's no one that's immune to it. And the only way to really, really make the difference and to save people's lives is to be in tune, to be there for someone else. Actually, the court system always says, if there's a community backing that person, if there's friends, the strongest support system is what can save someone down the line. Tishrei is coming up. We don't know, there's many archim coming, guests. It's a beautiful thing. It's the Rebbe's guest. Our community has a beautiful schus. At the same time, unfortunately, this world is mixed, good and bad. We don't know who's coming. There's many people come in, and some people that have other interests to bring dangerous things over here, and we have to be aware. This event, like we said, is co-sponsored by Neshamos, by Amudim, ran by Tzvi Gluck. We have here a representative, David Kushner, known Tzvi for many years. Many of us know him. They built up an organization with resources that if someone sees something, and if we learn tonight signs to be aware, and we see something, we have who to call. There's real resources today to help us help anyone going through this. We have the Shomrim of Crown Heights, the Shomrim of Flatbush. We have Dr. Eli Rosen, who needs no introduction. Dr. Rosen, I was together with him before Dr. Rosen. The Hatzalah of Crown Heights, Yossi Friedman, all together co-sponsoring tonight's event. Thank you very much for all the work put in. But most important, the drive behind tonight's event to actually make it happen was the one and only Mrs. Chani Vogel from Aleph. She drove it from beginning to end, put everyone together to make this event an event that will actually save lives. If out of this whole event, one person realizes and becomes aware of someone going through this crisis and is able to get them help, the whole event was worth it. You saved a life, you saved the world. It's one by one. That's how we get it done. Dr. Rosen needs no introduction. He's a person, after one levaya, unfortunately, of someone who passed away from a drug overdose. I was near Dr. Rosen, and he put his hand on me. He said, "Shua, never again. We have to make sure this is the last one." Those were his words. And, Dr. Rosen sees everything. If someone sees everything, he sees it all. He knows what's going on. And he's a pretty realistic person. But his drive and his care to really make sure that never again, that this should not happen, that we could literally save a life by caring, by being there, by being more aware and having the tools to save a life is unparalleled. Dr. Rosen is a very, very special person. We're all very thankful to him for being who he is. Of course, I missed out Councilman Chaim Deutsch of Flatbush. Councilman Deutsch is involved for many, many years. He's always there to help. He's always there to make it happen. He just has in front of his eyes a true asking, making sure that every person, not only in the drug matters, but in everything, that our communities are safe. And we thank him very much for actually being here tonight and being involved in setting up this event. With no further ado, Dr. Rosen.
Thank you, Shua. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for all coming. There's a lot of people. This began as a, Dr. Rosen, will you talk about Narcan? And I said, yes, I'll talk about Narcan. And then when I saw one of the flyers, it said addiction and Narcan. So in order to get to talk about Narcan, I'm going to talk first a little bit about addiction. Definition. Addiction is a compulsive, chronic, physiological or psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects, and typically having well-defined symptoms of withdrawal when removed. That says a lot. Addiction is a way that needy people respond to what's missing or traumatic in their own lives or communities. There was a psychologist in the late 70s, 79, 80. His name was Alexander. He changed the way we think about addiction. Our original thinking about addiction was that addiction was solely the nature of the drug. That if one exposed any individual, and he worked with rats, not that rats are humans, but if one exposed any individual to a particular drug, that drug was so powerful and overwhelming in its effect that the person or the study subject became addicted almost immediately, powerlessly addicted. So what he did was he built a community of rats. He kept rats in single cages where they quickly became addicted when they were deprived of all social contact, living in a cage alone. And he put rats in communities, rat parks, where they had rat women and rat playgrounds and everything else. And he found that the rats that lived in rat park did not become addicted. Understand, they all had free access to morphine. There was morphine in the water bottle, and there were water bottles that without the morphine. So all the rats had free access. And the rats that lived in rat park, in a happy community of rats where there were other rats to socialize with, those rats did not become addicted, and in fact occasionally went over to the morphine, but most of the time just took the water. The rats who were living in solitary cages with nothing else to do but go over to the water rapidly became addicted and actually died. So he changed the whole paradigm about how we think about addiction, and he turned addiction from looking at the drug and the nature of the drug into looking at the individual and the nature of the individual. And so we have to think about addiction in those terms. And tonight I will talk specifically about fentanyl because that's the problem that brings us to Narcan. But before that, I'd like to think about addiction and the cause of addiction. And there are all types of addiction. As I said before in the definition, addiction doesn't have to be to drugs. Alcohol, sex, tobacco, gambling, porn, internet. These are all different ways to become addicted. And they all have a sort of common pathway that they, what was the definition over here? Harmful physical, psychological, or social effects. They isolate people. So addiction comes from, as we now understand it, what in the early days of Neshamos we called disconnection, and we still call it disconnection. And there were a few other words that this particular psychologist used that I like. Dislocation, and I'll tell you why I like dislocation, because I'm going to put it in a physical model for you. Alienation and disconnection. And what is it dislocation from? Or alienation from? First of all, it's an existential alienation, or disconnect, or dislocation. I'm disconnected from myself, my existence. I have I don't belong. I don't feel that I belong. I don't have a sense of purpose. I'm not sure why I'm living. That's existential disconnection. And we all experience, kids and adults, who live in a state of angst because of their existential disconnection or dislocation. It's not only disconnection from self or existential disconnection, but it's disconnection from society. I hear this all the time. Today I was talking with a young lady, and I said, she was obviously hurting, and I said, what do you feel What don't you like? And she spouted right away, I don't like my community. So disconnection from society and from the small society, which is our family. Our family, disconnect from significant others, my spouse, my children, my community. That's disconnect from society or dislocation. And then, of course, there's spiritual dislocation. Spiritual dislocation, I disconnect from God. I disconnect from Rabbi. I don't belong. I'm in the wrong movie. What's the opposite of dislocation? You know, I thought of this. Why do I like dislocation? Sometimes I get called upon when somebody has a shoulder dislocation and their shoulder is outside of the socket and they're in terrible pain and they can't move that shoulder. So when a person is in a state of existential disconnect or dislocation, they're in terrible pain and they're dysfunctional, they can't move. Literally, figuratively. First, that shoulder has to be put back in its place. Then one has to attend to the pain that surrounds the dislocation and therapy to get that shoulder moving effectively again. That's why I like this marshal. But my problem, and once again today I was faced with this problem, bepul mamish, is actually it's much easier to get a shoulder to go back into place than it is to get a person to relocate. And all of us who faced that, whether we're parents, whether we're friends, whether we're teachers, whether we're professionals, we all have that challenge where you see somebody is immensely dislocated, disconnected, alienated. But it's tough to get them back into place. And that's the piece that I personally have to work on and we all have to work on. The interesting thing about addiction is that when a person is in such pain, the pain of dislocation, addiction can provide a partial substitute for people who are severely dislocated. Addiction can be adaptive. It can help a person feel, at least temporarily, somewhat reconnected. So, for a short while at least, addiction is functional. Addictions, once again, are not only caused, as we thought they were, by the nature of the addictive drugs, irresistible peer pressure, genetic predisposition, or irreversible brain dysfunction. These are cofactors, and I'll talk about these factors, but they're cofactors only. Today I got a notice from the New York State Secretary for Health that every couple of months there's a grand rounds for all the physicians in the state. The grand rounds this month are on ACE. You know what ACE is? ACE. Adverse Childhood Experiences. Adverse Childhood Experiences. I want to postulate, along with the Secretary of Health for the state of New York, that adverse childhood experiences are the most important driver in a state of dislocation. Yes, the other things are cofactors. Genetics does play a role, and the nature of the drug does play a role. But adverse childhood experiences. Now let's for 1 minute think about what are adverse childhood experiences. The easy ones, right? A child who, God forbid, has been abused. A child who has been bullied. A child who has a learning disability or a learning problem that spends a lot of time outside of the classroom. A child who comes from a family where there's severe illness, where there's rank poverty, where there's terrible discord. Have I mentioned 50% of all the children that we know? Probably at least. So many children are suffering what we term adverse childhood experiences. Now, of all the children that suffer an adverse childhood experience, only 1 in 10 will become dislocated, or 1 in 4, I have no idea what the number is, not all. And it's clear that there are children who are resilient, that manage, that get through no matter what they went through in life. And you and I know them, and we see them as whole, wonderful children growing up and becoming adults, and we wonder how on earth did they come through all of that and still be okay? So the other cofactors that work into it when there is this adverse experience trigger a state of alienation or disconnection. And it's that we have to try and figure out and help with. That's where, long before we talk about Narcan, we have to identify these children and provide the help that they need to get that shoulder back in place. And I wish I knew how to do it. I would teach you all tonight, but I don't. I admit my own failing. I'm working on it. There have been various ways that society has tried to deal with the problem of addiction, of dislocation. First, they came up with the war on drugs, right? The war on drugs. The war on drugs began 40 years ago. I forget under which president, someone might remember, maybe Ford. 40 years ago. How many? $300 billion spent on the war on drugs. Sending soldiers to Mexico, to Colombia, huge amount of money. A complete failure. Incarcerating people. A complete failure. It doesn't work to put people in jail for drug taking. So that's one way that society tried to deal with it. The next method is the medical method. We have to provide Suboxone, we have to provide drugs and help and rehabilitation centers and everything else to people who are addicts, and that will solve the problem. Unfortunately, it also doesn't solve the problem. The third method is to introduce practices such as mindfulness or meditation or etc. on an individual level to try and help people deal with it. Minimal help. And then there are 2 more ways that we've tried to come to grips with this. The one is epitomized by the 12-step program, where there's a small community set up of like-minded individuals who find their place in a community and develop a sense of belonging. They relocate in a community, and it's that community that keeps them with a sense of belonging that helps them deal with their addiction. If the problem is alienation, part of the solution is belonging. That's why the 12-step, I believe that's one of the reasons at least why the 12-step program is so effective, because it creates that. Now, I wonder within this community why that's such a problem, but it is a problem nevertheless. There needs to be communities developed, and there are. Thank God there are 12-step programs within the community, but it's like the whole community should be a big 12-step program. We all belong here. It's ours. And then there's the big, the big talk, the international talk. This isn't only our problem, unfortunately, and it's not a problem limited to Brooklyn and New York. It's a global problem. There are more people dying of opioid overdoses in small towns in Ohio than there are here. And all of that has to do with fragmentation. I believe the cell phone has a lot to do with it. I think, international corporate culture, et cetera, the whole collapse of the healthcare system. Many different things, but I can't change the world. I would like to. Our Rabbi certainly wanted to change the world and did change the world. And if we could continue with all of that momentum, we would be great. How can I tell if my child has a problem with addiction? Well, look for the signs of dislocation. Look for the signs of alienation. What are they? You want me to spell them out? You all know what they are. School performance. I just put that at the top. But all of a sudden their school performance changes, and their attendance, their productivity, their communication, their socialization. I think I need to broaden out on all of these things. Their communication is how much they're sharing. People who are dislocated stop sharing. They might choose one or two friends to share with, but they stop sharing with their parents pretty quickly. Their socialization, they change their friends or their friendships, or lose their friends or their friendships. Change. Somebody who is alienated, disconnected, dislocated, changes. My goodness gracious, that's not the same kid that I saw last year or I knew last year. That's not my child. No, it is your child. It's just your child's now entered into a new state of being. What can we do about it? I wish I knew. Talk. Share. Avoid further dislocation. Understand that this person is in pain and don't pull on that arm unless you know what you're doing. You'll only cause more pain and more dislocation. Encourage connection. However it is, whatever it takes, encourage connection. With whomever. Love your children for who they are, not what they are doing at the time. Everybody, myself included, has to find a place where we can actually love our children and show it to them, at the times when they need it most. Instead of criticizing them, there was a beautiful meme that went around last week. When you criticize your child, they hate themselves. They won't stop hating you, but they hate themselves. When you're with your children and your others, beloveds, who are in a state of alienation, dislocation, avoid distractions. Put your cell phone down. Don't be on the computer. It's mostly the cell phone. That person wants your undivided attention, especially if they're sharing with you. Nothing that important is coming through your phone that you have to stop and start looking at it in the middle of a deep conversation. Hopefully you can have that deep conversation. I want to, not in a small way, say that the last solution that I'm going to offer is the solution that the Rebbe pushed time and time again, which was Choivos Halavavos. To look into Choivos Halavavos, not to look into it. I looked into it once recently we gave out the pamphlet in translated English, and I looked into it. Because I only looked into it, I don't think I got a lot out of it. It's not that easy. But I would say that, and clearly, who am I to say that Rabbi said very clearly that people who are having serious issues in this regard should look into Chovos Halavavos, should learn Chovos Halavavos, and perhaps we should all learn Chovos Halavavos. It will surely stand us in good stead. I'm going to move on and talk about something lighter. Fentanyl. Of the addictive drugs, the current scourge, what we're dealing with today that's killing our youth, is a drug called fentanyl. I want you all to concentrate a little bit because I'm going to get quite scientific. I think everybody can manage it. I'm going to explain opioids, and I'm going to explain fentanyl a little bit, and then I'm going to explain Narcan, and then we'll hand over to the folk that are going to put the Narcan in your hands, hopefully, and you'll know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Opioids are a group of substances that are derived from the poppy plant originally, the original one being opium. Became more refined, and we developed a group of drugs from those opioids that were semi-synthetic, meaning we had to take some of the opium and alter the molecules. That's heroin. That's oxycodone. And then opioids went another step further, and they became completely synthetic, made in a factory. Cheaply. Easily. In a factory. 50 times more potent than morphine is fentanyl. And it's completely synthetic. It's made in a factory. All opioids have similar effects on the brain. And the way they have this effect is by attaching to a receptor in the brain. Imagine a switch. Here's the opioid molecule. It's fentanyl. Let's call it by its name. It's a fentanyl molecule. It's black or purple. And it attaches to a switch and turns that switch on. Now, depending on where that switch is located in the brain, different things happen. The first and probably the most important effect, which is why it's used, is it causes euphoria. It causes a sense of well-being. So somebody who's in a state of alienation, disconnect, dislocation, now feels well for the first time. And they'll describe it. They will tell you about the sensation of feeling whole again, or happy again, or at peace again, in the right movie now. It causes euphoria. It also causes pain relief. So when it activates the switch, it lowers the pain threshold and there's pain relief. That's why we use it in pain relief. It has one or two other nasty effects. It causes nausea and constipation. But most importantly, when it does that, that switch is the breathing switch. And it switches off the drive to breathe. It switches off the drive to breathe. So along with the euphoria and the feeling good comes with, I don't have to breathe. And that I don't have to breathe comes from the very heart of the brain, the part of the brain that drives breathing. We've said that the affinity for the receptor, the way in which it binds that receptor, is at least 50 times as potent as morphine. I want to take this moment to talk about prescription oxycodone, Percocet, Vicodin, which is hydrocodone. I'm missing a few names for it, but essentially oxycodone, OxyContin, in a prescription form. Go back historically. There was a pain doctor at Memorial Sloan Kettering about 30 years ago. His name was Dr. Portnoy, who developed a theory that people in pain were not subject to the risks of addiction. That people who took opioids, oxycodone, for pain were not subject to addiction. That as soon as their pain got better, they would have no problem getting off of the oxycodone. And this led Purdue Pharmaceuticals to make as much oxycodone as they could produce. And all the doctors who for years had been under the gun, you can't prescribe opioids, all of a sudden they became released, and now they were the patient's best friends. You had a sprained ankle, you got Percocet. You had your tooth taken out, you got Percocet. You had your back sprained, you got Percocet. Or Vicodin, it doesn't make a difference, or oxycodone or OxyContin. You had your gallbladder out, you got Percocet. Una sei weiter. Well, Mr. Portnoy, Dr. Portnoy, Professor Portnoy was wrong. He's admitted he was wrong. He produced a generation of doctors who wrote easily, who wrote for 100 tablets at a time. Oh, you sprained your ankle, Percocet, 50 tablets. Take one every 6 hours. And after taking them for 4 days, either you put them in your closet where your kid's friend found them or your kid found them, or, you know what, on the 5th day you went to work and you felt nervous and you didn't feel comfortable. And you said, you know, when I was taking that Percocet, I actually felt good. So you took one on the 5th day that you went to work, even though your back wasn't hurting you anymore. And before long, the patient has an opioid problem. Please, if you or your children are in pain and the doctor wants to prescribe an opioid, whether it be Percocet, Vicodin, I don't care what it is, even Tylenol with codeine, say no thank you. If the pain is excruciating, take 2 days' supply and make sure you call for more if necessary. But as far as possible, use ice, use Motrin, Advil, Tylenol, combination of the above. Of course, not to toxic levels. But avoid that prescription. Doctors have become more savvy. They're giving less. But doctors are still giving unnecessary opioids. What are the signs of an overdose? How do we know that a person... Oh, before I talk about that, sorry. Alcohol and opioids. Alcohol is another thing. It also has its own receptor, and that receptor also affects the drive to breathe. So that when a person mixes alcohol, as the kids often do, and certainly the young people in our society are used to seeing alcohol and being brought up around alcohol, when alcohol and opioids are mixed together, the potency, its ability to turn off respiration, is multiplied 10 times. So what would have been manageable mixed with 2 or 3 shots of vodka becomes completely unmanageable. How do we recognize the signs of overdose? Nodding out, deep sleep, unrousable, always with pinpoint pupils, respiration shallow, sonorous, snoring. What can we do about it? Well, we have naloxone, Narcan, and that's what this evening's about, and that's what is going to save a life, hopefully. Here's the opioid molecule, the fentanyl molecule attached to that receptor. And it attaches very, very tightly Why is it so potent? Because it attaches tightly and it really has an action. Here's naloxone, Narcan. What the Narcan does, it knocks the opioid out of the receptor. It knocks the fentanyl out of the receptor and reverses the effect of the fentanyl or of the opioid almost instantaneously. I have to put a little caveat here that fentanyl is so powerful that in the old days with heroin, it would just take one shot, one nasal spray. Fentanyl is so powerful that it may take 4, it may take 8 nasal sprays, and it may not work. But it's our best shot. So what we do, once again, is we replace the bad one with one that doesn't do anything. Yes, it attaches to the receptor, but it doesn't turn the switch. It just attaches to the receptor. And because it doesn't turn the switch, it actually doesn't turn any switches. It attaches to the receptors but not turn the switch. Because it doesn't turn the switch, it is harmless. That's the take-home message. You can't hurt a person with Narcan. You can save their lives. So don't sit there and go to Google and figure out whether you should or you shouldn't use it. If you have a doubt, a guest comes to your house and your husband is in the sukkah and serves him a couple of drinks and he says he's going to go and lie down in the lounge, and you find him, God forbid, in a state of stupor with pinpoint pupils, it's time for action. And in order to act, you have to have it. You can't go running over to my house and ask me for mine because you've lost 5 vital minutes. Even if you call Hatzalah, they're coming and they'll be there quick, and believe me, they all have it, but you've also lost time. What's important to know, please, and I'm sure that this will be stressed, is that if ever one is in a position where you use Narcan, you must trigger the 911 system first, please, because you don't want to be left there alone without help on its way. I'm now going to ask Mr. David Kushner from Amudim to come up and present the Narcan.
First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Rosen not only for his words tonight, but his passion and his dedication towards the health, well-being, and betterment of all of our communities. I also personally want to thank him for covering so much of the ground I was going to cover, thereby making my words much shorter. I also want to give a very big thank you to the Aleph Institute for putting this event together, as well as all of the co-sponsors, Shomrim of Crown Heights, Shomrim of Flatbush, Hatzalah, Neshamos, and the driving force behind tonight's event, Mrs. Chani Vogel, deserves a very, very, very big round of applause. It gives me immense pleasure to call upon one of tonight's community partners, who has not only been a partner in tonight's event, but truly is a partner in virtually every good thing that goes on, not only in the Crown Heights community, but throughout Brooklyn and throughout the entire city. It gives me immense pleasure to call upon Councilman Chaim Deutsch to share a few words.
Thank you very much. Back in 1991, I founded the Flatbush Shomrim Safety Patrol, and you have many of the members that are here today. And back then, occasionally we used to get calls about a teenager using drugs. And unfortunately, the resources weren't available as they are today. And with these great organizations who are partnering and working together, such as Amudim, Neshamos, Aleph, Flatbush, and Shomrim and Hatzalah, you know, there's no reason for us not to reach out when we see something is wrong. You know, this morning, I received a phone call from someone telling me that there was a social media piece of someone sending out a tweet saying that he or she will commit suicide. So I took that information, and of course I didn't know who that person was or where that person lives, so I can't just pick up a phone and call 911. So I called up Thrive NYC, which is something that the city has, an agency working with mental health for all New Yorkers. So I gave it over to Susan Herman, who took that information and told me she forwarded that message over to the police department. And within several hours, I was informed that that individual was successfully taken to a hospital and is currently under evaluation. And after this incident, I called back the caller after receiving a call from the New York City Police Department saying that you have just saved a life. So I called back the caller that originally called me, not taking any credit, and I said, you know, by the way, you did call me today regarding this issue, regarding this social media tweet, and you just saved a life. And that person told me it wasn't me. Someone else called me to call you. So I relayed a message, called the person that let you know of this tweet, and say thank you to that person. And this is how we in the Jewish community work together. One sees something that is out of the ordinary, or alerts someone else who may not have the resources and contacts a third individual. And it's so important because awareness is number one. When you see something, you need to say something, and you need to reach out and touch someone and not to be in denial and not to ignore it. We need to make sure that when we see something wrong, reach out. There are organizations out there that are doing God's work, and they're amazing. And I'm proud that in the New York City Council, we recognize Amudim, Shomrim, and Hatzalah, and many others here, that we are able to fund these wonderful organizations through the New York City Council's Jewish Caucus. So I hope you take back a wealth of information, and with the holidays approaching, with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, let's only hear good news, and let's work together for the betterment of the community, and let's watch our children, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow up in a beautiful environment. So thank you all for being out here today. Thank you for all the sponsors, and thanks to all the members of the Shomrim and Hatzalah for all the work that you do each and every day. And on a separate note, I had to run out before I received a phone call from the police commissioner. As you know, this is extremely important. I'm just going to take another 30 seconds. As we know, hate crimes here in New York City are on the rise. More than 62% of hate crimes are anti-Semitic hate crimes. And we need to hold the city accountable for not just doing what they are supposed to do after we at the City Council passes bills, like I just passed a bill to open a new mayoral office of hate crime prevention. I funded $1.6 million for NYPD Argus cameras around shuls and yeshivas. And we have the first pilot program here in Brooklyn South to have NYPD auxiliary officers who you'll start seeing protecting houses of worship. And there's so many other things that we do in the City Council as chair of the Jewish Caucus and my 13 members of this caucus. But we need to hold the city accountable of being proactive rather than reactive. And we're going to hope that over this next holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, we're going to see an increase of not only patrols, but of undercover officers patrolling the areas that were impacted with hate crimes across the city, because we need to hold New York City accountable. So with your help and with our work, we could accomplish a lot. So thank you all very much, and have a blessed New Year.
Thank you very much again, Chaim. So as Dr. Rosen said, my name is David Kushner. I work for an organization called Amudim. I'm just going to give you a very brief rundown of what we do at Amudim. We are a social service agency that deals primarily with two larger issues. We deal with victims of sexual abuse, and we deal with those that are suffering from substance abuse and all of the various sorts of addiction that Dr. Rosen spoke about earlier. Within those two broader issues, there's really three categories of what we do. One is awareness, events such as this, PSA videos, online presence, social media presence, so on and so forth. Another component of what we do is prevention and education within schools, with various community leaders, in partnership with many organizations such as the Shomrims and the Hatzalahs, so on and so forth, and with the rabbinic leadership as well. And the third component, what we do, which actually takes up the vast majority of our time, energy, and resources, is comprehensive clinical case management on behalf of those that are victims of sexual abuse or those that they themselves or family members of theirs are suffering from substance abuse or various sorts of addiction. So the Narcan training tonight is a combination of the awareness and the education component. So normally we go through a number of the topics, and thankfully again to Dr. Rosen, who covered many of them. Is there a real crisis? I don't think we really need to go too deep into that, judging from the size of the crowd in this room, that I think everybody recognizes there is. What are opiates? Dr. Rosen got into that a lot. What is Narcan? What each one of us, as good-hearted, well-meaning citizens of the community, can do in responding to an overdose. And then we're going to actually open a kit, show you what's in it and how to administer it. And then at the end of the presentation, after it's over, both Dr. Rosen and myself and people from Aleph and the other organizations that have partnered with us will all be around to ask questions on an individual basis. So the first question of, is there a real crisis? The fact of the matter is, the simple answer is yes. Overdose deaths are the single leading cause of death for any single individual under the age of 35 in New York City. Overdose deaths outnumber suicides, homicides, and motor vehicle accidents all combined. And the fact of the matter is that addiction is a disease. There's no question about it. The disease of addiction does not discriminate in any way, shape, or form. Not by age, not by gender, not by race, not by religion, not by geography, and not by socioeconomic class. It's hit everybody, and it's hit everybody hard, and it's hit everybody across the board. I'm going to skip through some of the slides now because Dr. Rosen graciously covered it. Dr. Rosen spoke a lot about fentanyl earlier, and he spoke about opioids and opioid receptors. There's one point I want to make about fentanyl. Dr. Rosen spoke about the strength of fentanyl and how potent it is and how addictive it is. I would venture to say that just about every single person in this room knows somebody, whether it was a parent or a grandparent, a neighbor, a teacher, a Rabbi in yeshiva, that at the end of their life, when there was nothing more the doctors could do medically, they put them on hospice care or palliative care. And in an effort to make their last days more comfortable, they were given IV morphine. Morphine is an opiate. It's a type of opiate. And when they say to make somebody more comfortable, all it really means is to remove their pain and to allow them their last days or their last hours without discomfort and agony. The fentanyl that's out there on the street is 50 to 100 times stronger than what they are giving to end-of-life patients in the hospital via IV morphine. Just to give you an idea of how strong and how potent that fentanyl out there is. One of the questions we're asked most often is, what puts any one person at a greater risk for overdose? Obviously, there are positive uses for opiates, and there are times when it is prescribed medically and taken appropriately. So the first thing is obvious. Any opiate taken outside of proper medical direction and proper medical supervision automatically puts somebody at a much greater risk for overdose. But there are other things. Changes in tolerance. This applies both on the way up and on the way down. What do I mean by that? When a person is transitioning from a substance user, an occasional user, to a substance abuser, to somebody who's using on a more regular basis, to an actual addict, someone who now absolutely needs it in order to function the way they think they should function, and they're doing this outside of medical supervision, each time they step it up, where they started at 1 pill a day, then it went to 2 pills a day, then it went to 2 pills twice a day, then 10 pills a day, then pills weren't cutting it, they switched to heroin. Each time they step it up to the next level, they don't know if they've now hit that level that their body can't handle anymore. That's what I mean by on the way up. And each time they step up to that next level, they risk dying of an overdose. That's what I mean by on the way up. What do I mean by on the way down? Unfortunately, after a person passes away from an overdose, very often we hear from their family, from their friends, from their community members, from those that knew them the best, we hear it couldn't have been an overdose. They've been clean for 6 months. They've been doing so well lately. They just got their life back together. It couldn't have been an overdose. And the fact is, most of the time we hear that, it's absolutely true. But it's also true that they died of an overdose. How? Somebody who suffered from addiction and went through that transition from user to abuser to addict and stepped it up each way, and then luckily got clean with the support of their family, community, detox, rehab, whatever it was. They got clean, and they got their life back together. And they were clean for 3 months or 6 months or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. And then they hit some sort of speed bump in life. Whether it was a loved one who passed away, whether it was a friend that passed away from an overdose, whether they lost a job, or they went through, lo aleinu, a divorce, or some sort of speed bump in life that pushed them to fall off the wagon. Instead of going back to the original dose they took, the original time they ever took opiates, before there was a tolerance and a resistance built up in their system, they go back to the dose that was most familiar to them right before they got clean. And as they were stepping it up, there was a tolerance and a resistance that was built up. Now that they have been clean for X amount of time, that tolerance doesn't exist anymore. So when they fall off the wagon and go back to it without that tolerance and resistance in their system, it's way more than their body can handle. Dr. Rosen spoke about mixing different drugs, the mixing of alcohol with opiates, variations in strength and content of drugs. A person who's taking a certain drug or even a prescription drug that they're abusing or misusing, if they run out of it just because a friend or a neighbor or someone they know has a similar drug, it may not be the same dosage or the exact same pill, it may have a different effect. Previous experiences of non-fatal overdose. Every single time a person overdoses and does not die, whether it was because Hatzalah came fast enough, whether somebody called Shomrim and they came and got them help, whether it was a good-hearted community member such as any one of you in this room who came upon the scene and administered Narcan, whether it's because somebody got an ambulance there, whatever the reason was that that person was saved and didn't die, the next time that person overdoses, they are 10 times more likely to die. Just about every single person in this room knows somebody who has suffered from the horrific disease of cancer. If you ask any cancer survivor, somebody who, through amazing doctors or successful surgery or chemo or radiation or any number of the wonderful treatments that are available, if you ask any cancer survivor that's in remission what their biggest nightmare and their biggest fear in life is, every single one of them will tell you the same thing. It's that the cancer comes back. Because when it does, it's much harder to beat the second time around. It's almost as if it comes back with a vengeance. The same theory, maybe not the same medicine, but the same theory is true of overdoses. Someone who survives an overdose is statistically 10 times more likely to die the next time they overdose. And the last one is those who use alone. Overdoses very, very rarely happen anymore. The old stereotypical needle in the arm, somebody put a needle in, and within a few seconds they were passed out and gone. Overdoses happen over a period of time, depending on the strength and the quantity of the drug and your tolerance level. It could be a half hour, it could be 2-3 hours, it could be 6 hours, because opiates stay in your system for up to 6 hours. But a person who goes into an overdose, because of what Dr. Rosen explained earlier, the effects it has on the pain receptors, doesn't have the cognitive ability to recognize that something is wrong with them. They don't have the ability to recognize that they're going in and out of consciousness, that their breathing is getting worse. They can't recognize it in themselves. Their pain receptors are clouded by these opiates. The signal's not getting there. So somebody who uses and locks themselves in a room and nobody's around them, there's nobody there to recognize something's wrong and get them help. But if it's somebody that other people do encounter and are around, other people can recognize it. The physiology, Dr. Rosen spoke about as well. So now I'm going to get into the actual Narcan and the administration of the Narcan. Narcan is a safe, very effective, as Dr. Rosen said, not 100% of the time, especially because of the fentanyl out there, drug. It is a drug that does two very simple things. It reverses the effects of opiates, and it helps restore your breathing. It has zero effect on a person, neither positive nor negative, if there are no opiates in your system. There are no negative health effects. There are no risks of dependence. There are no contraindications. There is nothing in it that is a known allergen. There is no minimum age, no maximum age, no minimum weight, no maximum weight. There are no risks in taking Narcan. There are no risks in administering Narcan. If a person is suffering a heart attack, and there's even the slightest chance that the medical emergency they're going through could be related to opiate overdose, give them the Narcan. It's not going to hurt them. If it's a heart attack, it's not going to help them, but it's not going to hurt them. If a person is suffering a stroke and you give them Narcan, it's not going to hurt them. If a person's suffering from a gunshot wound, if you give them Narcan, it's not going to hurt them. Won't help them unless there's opiates in their system, but it absolutely won't hurt them. Dr. Rosen spoke about how it worked with the pain receptors. There are two types of Narcan. There is the older version, which is a small needle similar to an insulin pen, for those of you who are familiar with diabetes. And there is the newer, more modern version, which we're giving away to each of you tonight, which is a very simple nasal spray. Narcan takes effect usually in 2 to 5 minutes, and it stays in your system for 60 to 90 minutes. I don't rattle off those numbers just to waste your time and rattle off numbers. It's important, because opiates stay in your system for up to 6 hours. If you come across somebody that's experiencing an overdose and you administer Narcan and you literally bring them back from the brink of death and they say, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm up, I'm alert, the fact of the matter is the Narcan could wear off before the opiates do. And what did we say just a couple minutes ago? Someone who suffered a non-fatal overdose, the next time they overdose are 10 times more likely to die. Last thing in the world you want to hear, you're walking down the street and Shmuley says to you, hey, did you hear? Baruch Dayan Emes. Pliny ben Pliny was nifter. It looks like it was an overdose. And you say, it can't be true. He actually overdosed, but I brought him back with Narcan. I saved his life 3 hours ago. What happened? You left him? He started using again, or the Narcan wore off before the opiates were out of system, and he went back into an overdose state, and that time he did die. You don't want to save somebody's life just to find out that he died a few hours later. So anytime you administer Narcan, it is crucial beyond crucial that they still get proper medical attention and that they are not left alone. Because many times what we'll see happen is somebody will be given Narcan and they may not be so happy that they got Narcan because it killed their high. Whatever pain they were experiencing, whether it was a physical, an emotional, psychological pain that they were experiencing, whatever disconnect, as Dr. Rosen put it, was going through their mind that led them to take these opiates, by giving them the Narcan, you remove the effect of the opiates. And in a desperate attempt to regain that high, they start taking 1, 2, 3, 5 times the normal amount because it's not having an effect, because while the Narcan's in your system, it's not getting to the receptors. The opiates aren't going to have any effect. But once that Narcan wears off, it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks and almost certainly send them into an overdose. So if you do administer Narcan, please make sure you call Hatzalah, you call 911, somebody stays with them for the next 5-6 hours, something. They cannot be left alone, because the risk of another overdose, and this time a fatal one that leads to a levaya, is too great. We spoke about it not doing any harm. Dr. Rosen spoke about some of the warning signs. The difficulty breathing, a blue or grayish color by the lips, which indicates poor circulation, the unresponsiveness, the gargling or snoring. Dr. Rosen went through all of that. So what do you do if you come across somebody that's showing any one of these signs that Dr. Rosen spoke about? First thing you want to do, if somebody's unresponsive, you want to find out if they actually are unresponsive or they're just taking a nap. If it's somebody you know, you could walk up to them, you could rub your knuckles across their chest, you can grab them by the shoulder, try to shake them a little bit. If it's somebody you really don't like, you could slap them across the face. If it's a stranger that you don't know, or somebody for whatever reason you're not comfortable having physical contact with, you can get up close to them and yell, hey, are you okay? You need any help? See if they're awake. Try to wake them up by yelling at them. If they truly are unresponsive, what do you think the next thing you want to do is? Any guesses? Call 911 or Hatzalah. That's correct. Before you do anything else, you want to get the next level of emergency response on its way. While you are waiting for Hatzalah or 911 to come, give them the Narcan. Again, you could ask them. You could ask the people around them. Is there any opiates? Did he take any drugs? Whether the answer is yes or no, whether you question if it's true or not true, they're being honest or dishonest, if there's even the smallest mashuhu of a chance that they're telling the truth, that there are opiates involved, give them the Narcan. Because again, it can do absolutely no harm if there are no opiates. But if there are, it's what could save their life. Once you give the Narcan, and we're going to show it in a minute, in between doses, because it takes 2 to 5 minutes to kick in, You could do rescue breathing. If you want, we can do a demonstration. There's Hatzalah members here. If any of the Hatzalah members want to give a demonstration on rescue breathing at the end, afterwards, please approach them. They'll be more than happy to do it. Once you give Narcan, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to work, or it's not going to work. There is no middle ground. There is no middle ground. If it does not work, you can give rescue breathing, wait 5 minutes, give another dose of Narcan. Each one of these bags has 2 full doses. If you want, we're more than happy to give you 2 bags. If you want, as we leave and you're picking up your kits, you could just tell them if you want 1 bag or 2. The truth is, with the response time of Hatzalah here, if you're giving every 5 minutes, you shouldn't need more than 2 doses till they're on scene, because their response time, sometimes you don't even need more than 1 dose till they get on scene. Their response time is so good. That's if it doesn't work. If it does work, there's a few things that may happen. So, number 1, they may show some signs of withdrawal. Dizzy, nauseous, headache, groggy. Just assure them that they were on the brink of death. You brought them back. You saved their life. The Narcan's going to wear off. We're going to get them to the hospital or a doctor, and they'll be fine. You'll also hear stories about people that were given Narcan and then suddenly jumped up and were violent and angry and started hitting, kicking, and punching people. I'm not going to tell you that that has never happened in the world, but I promise you, it does not happen nearly as often as YouTube would like us to believe. That much I could promise you. It can happen, but it is very rare, because there are people that are upset that you killed their high. But at the same time, it also saved their life. Just reassure them and make sure they get to the next level of medical care. If for whatever reason you do need to leave somebody alone, even for a minute or 2, whether it's to run downstairs and open the door for Hatzalah, whether it's to go grab a phone to call 911, whatever the reason is. Once you give them Narcan, don't leave them flat on their back, because once it kicks in, they could be a little dizzy or nauseous, so lay them on the side. You don't want to save their life with Narcan only to find out that, they aspirated on their own vomit because they were laying flat on their back. Inside the Narcan kits, like I said, there are 2 full doses of Narcan. There is an instruction sheet, courtesy of the New York City Department of Health. 2-sided, very short, very easy to read. There is a rescue breathing mask for those of you who are able and willing to do rescue breathing until it kicks in. It opens up, very simple. You put it against their face, either side. It doesn't make a difference. It's a one-way mask, so whatever you're breathing in is going in, but nothing from their mouth is coming back. And you also have your blue prescription card, which allows you not only to carry the Narcan, but to administer it as you see fit, and certifies that you've been through such a training and are authorized to give Narcan. If you do use it, give us a call. Let us know. You don't have to say your name. You don't have to say who you used it on. The city, we like to track it. We are more than happy to replace it. If your Narcan is approaching its expiration date, give us a call. We're more than happy to replace it. It doesn't cost you anything. The expiration date on the Narcan kits you guys are getting today, I believe, is March of 2020. So it's good for about 1.5 years. But if you do see that it's approaching the expiration date, just let us know. We're happy to replace it. If you have friends that you want to give what's that? 2021, sorry. I apologize. March of 2021, I apologize. You're right. Just let us know. We always recommend every once in a while, once a month or so, just open up your Narcan kit, take a peek in, remind yourself what's in there, take 60 seconds, read the paper. If you're ever in a position to use it, you want to be fresh on it. You don't want to have to second guess yourself. Giving the Narcan is very, very easy. The top right corner where it says peel here, you peel it back, you take out the Narcan, You put it between your fingers, you put it up their nose, and spray. And that's it. Each one is a full dose. You wait 5 minutes. If it did not work, if it did work, great. If it did not work, 5 minutes later, administer the other one. You shouldn't have to get to another 5 minutes later because I'm sure Hatzalah will be there on time. One thing we hear a lot, and this is very important, and this is actually what I'm going to close with. One thing we hear very often is somebody was dying of an overdose, but nobody called to get help because they didn't want to get in trouble. The New York City Police Department saw this dangerous trend where literally people were dying in front of their so-called supposed friends and nobody was calling help. So the NYPD got together a number of law enforcement agencies around the state, and they brought in the prosecutors, the district attorneys, who then brought in the state legislature, the politicians, and they passed what's called the 911 Good Samaritan laws, which basically say that anybody who they themselves are experiencing an overdose and the person who is calling to get that person help are protected from arrest and prosecution if they pick up a phone to call and get help. This qualifies for anything up to what's an A2 felony. An A2 felony is 8 ounces or a half a pound of illegal drugs or less. It doesn't apply to those that are drug kingpins. You know, if the cops walk in a house and there's 20,000 pounds of, cocaine there, it's not going to protect that guy. But they made a conscious decision. It covers all underage. It covers all marijuana offenses, all paraphernalia offenses. It covers all sharing offenses. Do we know what sharing offenses are? If I give you drugs, not sell you, for at a party, I happen to have something on me, I share it with you, and you die, I get charges if I'm a drug dealer. It's not tully, it's not dependent on any financial transaction. Anyone who supplies drugs to somebody else gets charged as if they themselves are a drug dealer, whether or not there's a financial transaction. It's very, very important. And the youth especially need to know this, that if they see a friend of theirs having a problem, that's having an adverse reaction or could be experiencing an overdose, pick up the phone and call. You're not going to get in trouble. The police and the politicians care more about saving people's lives than they do about locking people up. And that's important for us to know, and it's important for our youth to know. The last and final point I want to make, and I skipped over it earlier. There are 5 requirements. Anytime somebody is going to use opiates, even under proper medical supervision. We spoke about the risks of using them improperly. But even proper medical supervision, it must be prescribed for a legitimate reason. It must be prescribed by a legitimate doctor. It must be filled in a legitimate pharmacy. It must be taken according to the direction of that doctor, and it must be disposed of properly. If somebody has a root canal surgery or a tooth pulled or they had a hernia operation or whatever procedure, and they were legitimately prescribed some sort of painkillers, opiates afterwards, and they were given a prescription, X amount of milligrams, no more than 3 times a day as needed. And in the end, they wound up only using 4 of the 20 pills that they were prescribed. Throw them out after. Flush them down the toilet. Because let me tell you what we've seen happen many times. Okay, so in every police station, there are drug disposal boxes. You could just drop them off. You could throw them out. You could crush them and throw them out, dispose of them in a safe way. But what we've seen many times is that people have this type of medicine in their medicine cabinets, in their bathrooms. and a plumber comes into their house to do work, or an electrician, or an old classmate of their child's, or, an estranged cousin who they haven't seen in 15 years comes for a family simcha that they may not be aware of had a problem. And this person, uses the restroom, because if your plumber's in the house doing work and he needs to use the restroom, he's going to go in the restroom. He opens up the medicine cabinet, there's a pill there, there's a bottle of pills there, and he takes them. You don't want that on your head. You don't want that on your head that that the pills that you left there caused somebody to overdose. And you also don't want it left on your head. Thankfully now, through the work of organizations like Neshamos and some of the work we do at Amudim and many other organizations, there's a lot of people out there now in recovery that are not dead. You don't want that temptation to be there for those people. Well, now they're in a bathroom that nobody's looking, it's a locked door, and they now see what was their drug of choice sitting in a medicine cabinet and giving them that temptation. Same thing applies with alcoholism. If you're at a simcha, if you're at a kiddush, if you're at a farbrengen and you offer somebody a l'chaim and they say no, thank you, don't ask them again. Because for all you know, that could be a person in recovery. And by pushing them, no, it's fine, just one, it's a simcha, come on. You might be pushing them to that drink that sends them back down that roller coaster of addiction. So we need to be cognizant of those, as the youth, of not glorifying these things. We need to be cognizant of the amount of people that are in successful and active recovery and not give them the temptations that they need. And we need to be cognizant of ourselves, and we need to be appreciative for the Dr. Rosens and the Hatzalahs and the Shomrims and the Chaverims and all the other Neshamos and all the other organizations that are working literally tag and nacht, day and night, to help our community. With that, I thank you all for coming out. Are there any closing remarks? Oh, Rabbi Brook.
Thank you so much, David Kushner. Thank you, Dr. Rosen. Thank you, everyone. This event was sponsored Le'ilu Nishmas Idan Ben Meir. Hopefully everyone could walk out of here knowing and being more aware to help one more person, two more people. Helping one person is saving the world. Aksiva v'achsima teva l'shana teva u'mesukah.